Oh hi everyone! Patch 7.4 is finally out, and after months of waiting to see what next direction the Final Fantasy team has in store for us, we are going to start seeing glimpses of what a post-Dawntrail world is going to look like. There are a couple questions that did intrigue me from the last patch though. For example, who are the Winterers? What direction are we going with our group of heroes? And finally, how much longer do I have to cope to see Sphene finally join the Scions? That last part is probably never going to happen, but you know, a guy can hope, right? Anyway, we begin the first introduction of the patch, really putting the proverbial bow on Dawntrail as a whole. We say goodbye to Alfie and Alizé as they head back to Garlemald, and to be honest, I completely forgot they were doing that. And we also say goodbye to Erenville and Wilclamot. For me, these set of cutscenes really give somewhat of a nostalgia hit, if that makes sense. And you know, it's kind of weird for me to say that since it's only been like a year and a half ago since we really started this expansion, but you can really tell that this game has gone through these roller coaster of emotions, not just with the players and myself, but also the developers themselves. And honestly, that's probably why these cutscenes really spoke to me, because it was basically saying, hey, we're done with this, we're moving on to our next adventure. Thanks for playing. We understand that this expansion was rough, but we're moving on. And just like that, Dawntrail is officially over. Now, before we talk about what comes next after this, I really want to talk about the elephant in the room during this patch, which is G'raha Tia. Specifically, we want to talk about the voice acting for this character, at least on the English side. So, if you don't know, the voice actor for G'raha Tia, or has been the voice actor for G'raha Tia, is Jonathan Bailey. He has progressively gotten busier as of recording this, of course. He's been in movies such as Wicked, you know, Bridgerton and all that kind of stuff. And he just sounds off in this expansion.
Lest you wonder, Kryl and I intend to remain here with Y'shtola.
There's a lot of things that people are saying that's like, it's not even Jonathan Bailey at all. There's also people saying that, oh, he just recorded these lines at home, and he was probably sick while he was recording these, and that's the result of that. Jonathan Bailey's publicist also came out and put out a statement saying they won't comment on anything Final Fantasy XIV related. So honestly, that does not give a great picture of the situation at all, at least on the Jonathan Bailey side. And this isn't necessarily a new thing too that's happened. Y'shtola's VA also had a similar issue in Dawntrail where her voice sounded off, but they eventually did re-record it. I just hope this doesn't become a recurring issue, and there's no real solution that I can think of off the top of my head other than just scheduling better. But even then, I'm pretty sure Square is already doing that. So I hope Square can be a little bit more cognizant about what's happening here, and hopefully it kind of mitigates this from happening in the future. Anyway, moving on, we begin to talk about the key that will pretty much unlock the future of the game. And at the discussion, we talk about finding out what happens outside the barrier in Living Memory, as well as if there are any survivors outside of Living Memory. So, with that being said, we traverse outside of Living Memory, and we head into the dungeon of this patch. Okay, so first impression of the dungeon. The bosses are, nothing really screams out to me, honestly. Not really difficult bosses or something that makes me go, oh wow, that was a really cool thing they just did. However, if you're an FF9 fan, this dungeon will give you that sip of nostalgia that you're looking for. Just heading to Treno is a really cool experience, and seeing all the Malala fight alongside you is just chef's kiss. But overall, this dungeon is honestly nothing to write home about, but it is a really cool spectacle if you're an FF9 fan. Okay, now that the dungeon's over, we get introduced to the people of Treno, the Malala. I found this part to be the most interesting in the MSQ, and it is the meat and potatoes of it, since we get to see what people are doing outside of Alexandria and how they are doing and how they are surviving out here. It was also really cool to see some FF9 callbacks like the auction house, and there was also the place where they played a triple triad tournament. This section is also where we delve into some of Kryl's internal conflict of not knowing which place to call home. This is something that a lot of people feel, and it resonated with me since it's, you know, I've been through something very similar to this as well. Is it the culture that influenced you to call the place home, or is it the memories and the people that do? And I don't think there is a right answer here, of course, but it is interesting to see these characters going through this very realistic scenario again, because I feel like we haven't seen that in a while. Anyway, after we cheer up Kryl a little bit and we do a couple errands here and there, we finally get introduced to the big trial boss, the Hell Train. Now, the Hell Train is probably my favorite fight in this expansion by far. It is challenging enough the first time, but it also brings that cinematic feel to it. At first, I was really skeptical about this fight, because while we're fighting a train in essence, it does seem a little ridiculous, but at the same time, That's also what kind of makes it amazing, right? I was hesitant to think of what they could possibly do to make this an interesting experience and kind of shake things up, because that's really what they've been doing in Dawn Trail. The train forcing you to go from car to car, the train having buff arms and just kind of clapping you. It really leans into that absurd nature, and I think that's why I had a great time with it. And overall, I think this is a kind of common theme that's been going on with Dawn Trail, is that the fights have just been so good, but everything else is just kind of dwindled that experience, if that makes sense. Right after the trial, we also get to play a little bit as Kryl herself, and we get to save the people of Treno. If we eventually do come in and save the day, quote unquote, we're not really saving the day. Kryl's doing fine on her own. After that, we finally start to have a discussion on what this key is, and finding out about Kryl's heritage, with the mayor being her aunt and Kryl being the heir to the role of the speaker. And for any of the Kryl fans out there, this really speaks to me that they're really leaning on Kryl to have a major aspect of the next expansion. And I know they also did something similar in the last expansion, but I truly think they're really setting her up to be a major player in the next expansion. We also seem to get an eerie message from Miali about the key and how it's been passed down from person to person. Like, okay, Auntie, we get it. It's bad luck to whoever gets this, right? But right after that, we see an interesting all-raw person who seems spooked when we see her. I wonder what that could be about. Anyway, we begin to say our heartfelt goodbyes to this place, and we continue our journey of figuring out what this key is. Okay, I know I just mentioned her a couple seconds ago, but let's talk about Halmarut and the squirrel, who ended up actually being Calyx. First off, I think it's really funny and fitting that Calyx ended up basically into a toy squirrel, and I think the gap is just there, and it just really hits it off with me. Anyway, on to the Assie and Halmarut. I think that's how you say her name. I don't really know what to make of her. I had to look it up, and she was part of the Convocation of 14, and basically she was the plant lady of the group. But I don't sense any malicious evil in her, nor do I think she wants to do what the previous Asians did before and wants to rejoin all the worlds. I think it's also in line with the preservation kind of aspect to it too, where she wants to preserve the life of people, and it also fits into her Convocation of 14 role, where she was a plant lady, and that's basically one aspect of botany, right? The conservation of life. I actually don't know anything about botany, but I feel like that's true. Anyway, I do think she wants the same thing as Calyx, which is to preserve the life of these shards. Whether or not they do it the correct way, or the ethical way, I should say, is a different question, but to me, it seems that that's the intention I'm getting. They also seem to hint at the shards might be trying to rejoin themselves with the source naturally, and I think there's a lot of discussions of what happens after Hydaelyn and Zodiac are gone now, so it makes sense that they're going down this route. Overall, I think this patch is really good and probably the best thing in Dawn Trail at this moment. So if you've been on the fence about how things have been going on with FF14, I really think this patch will sway you on how things are going in the right direction, at least MSQ wise. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below, and thanks for watching, everyone.